Welcome, class. For today's math lesson, we'll be learning about how to find a percent of a number. So let's take, for our first example, a pretty simple problem. Let's try, what is 50% of 100? Now, 50% of 100, we might already know that 50% is the same as a half, and we might know that a half of 100 is 50. So let's start with something that we already know. So to find the percent of a number, we know that this word of means multiply. So this is going to be a multiplication problem. So it's like saying 50% times 100. Now, in order to do a problem like that, to solve a problem like that, we need to use what we already know about percents. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn 50% into a decimal. Now, to turn 50% into a decimal, we learned already that we need to take the decimal after the 50 and move it 2 spaces to the left. Now the decimal's in front of the 5 instead of after. So that would be written like this: 5/10. 50% is the same as 5/10. Now we have a decimal, and we know that the word of means multiply, so we're going to be multiplying this decimal times 100. Let's give that a try. So I'm going to write the number 100, and I'll write 5/10 here. And here we have a pretty standard multiplication problem. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 is 0 again, and 5 times 1 is 5. So there's an answer, 500. And then I count how many numbers are after a decimal in the problem. I see there's one number after the decimal, so I'll move the decimal one time in my answer. And I have 50 and 0/10, or I could just say 50. It's like saying $50 and no cents or something. So my answer here is 50. And what we see is that my sort of common sense answer that I got up here, because I knew that half of 100 is 50, is the same as the answer that I got by solving this problem with this kind of this series of steps here. Let's try 2 more problems. One I'll do along with you, and the other I'd like you to try on your own. So in your math notebook, please follow along. Okay, so let's try something a bit more challenging. Let's try, let's see, we will do, what is 60% of 70? 60% of 70. So we're going to start again by turning 60% into a decimal number. So again, we can imagine there's a decimal at the end of any number. The number 3, we can pretend there's a decimal after it. It just means that there's nothing after the decimal, but it's still useful to keep in mind that there is that's where the decimal point would be. So in your math notebook, go ahead and write 60%, just like we have here. And make sure you've got a little decimal right here. And we're going to move that decimal 2 times, once, twice. Decimal is now here. And so we've turned 60% into 6/10. 60% is now 6/10. And we can now multiply. So we know that of means multiply. So we can multiply 6/10 times 70. All right, well, 6 times 0, that's 0, and 6 times 7, that's 42. So we have 420. How many numbers are after a decimal in the math problem? I just see one number after a decimal, so we're going to move the decimal one time from the end of the problem to here. And now I can erase that, and I have 42 and 0/10, which is the same as saying 42. So 60% of 70 is 42. All right, let's try one more problem. This one I'd like you to try on your own. We're going to try what is 90%. This is the last one. We'll try it together. 90% of 50. So I'd like you to try this one on your own. Remember, of means multiply. So we're going to be turning this into a multiplication problem. And the first step is to turn this percent into a decimal number, and then multiply that decimal number by 50. Go ahead and give it a try on your own. Pause, and you can resume the video if you have any trouble or when you're done. All right, if you're done with the problem, we'll solve it together. So to begin with, let's turn 90% into a decimal. So moving that decimal from the end of the number to the beginning, or we're moving it 2 spaces, I should say. 90%, so the decimal is now here. I'm going to clean up the number here, so it's just 9/10. 90 hundredths, it's the same thing. And multiply that by 50. There we have it. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 5 is 45. And my decimal's at the end, of course, of that number. How many numbers in the problem are after a 0? I see just one number after a decimal. So I'm going to move that one time. And there we have it, 45 and 0 hundredths. 90% of 50 is 45. All right, well, be sure to let us know if you have any questions, and good luck with your work.